aga ma ei suuda ma ei saa connectoris, ei saa kätte veel service'ist tulevaid asju. Tehtakoon seda, õhtakoon tuleks küll. Nii.
Kas on meie käes või
meie käes? Kõikide jõustu koostusele ära otsin valmis kirjutada. AirPods Pro, miks see nagu AirPods Pro kasutada? See on jälle kuradi streigi. Ma võin kasutada AirPods Pro. Üks kaks, Mac Pro, Book Pro. Nee, remind me, what did we do last time?
Write all the requests and assignments, make deserialization and placing comments.
Did you actually do it?
Yes.
Yes? Nice.
We did.
Okay. So in theory you had your homework. Let me see what it was. Nee, allow user to place bombs, swap between players, visualize BattleShip boards, use the same menu system. Okay, doesn't wrap the text nicely here. Okay, and then it gets more complicated and complicated slowly. As expected. All right. So from the viewpoint of the code, you probably have something similar like I have here, just with nice visualization. So actually, I think I did write it somewhere here, at least a little bit. Console UI? No. Oh yeah, something like this. So a text-based visualization, some kind of, and one board underneath the other one. Okay, so the kind of the next topic is how do we actually keep track of what is going on? So where everything is. Has somebody already finished the game? Everything's done? With configuration? With
settings.
Yes, with settings, with
The settings, the only thing that I haven't done.
Okay, so let's see. What did I came up with? First, we have this board square state, which has EShip and ESBomb. In theory here, and then we have two tables of those. Okay, we have hours and enemies, let's say we have A and B, somewhere something like this. And every state describes the EShip. And initially, so let's say, square state. Okay. And some kind of visualization via the toString. Get board, copy of board. All right. Any ideas what to do next? So when I look at the description, what we need to do, we need to figure out first how to keep track of current configuration. And then when we have the configuration, we need to actually set up the ships on the board and then keep track of those ships. So okay, configuration probably comes after that. So the first problem here is how to keep track of our ships, and is the ship sunken or not sunken and stuff like that, and how to visualize those ships. So initially, just when looking at the one square, we have this EShip boolean. So there's true or false. Either there is or there isn't the ship. And then we have ESBomb. Either somebody has put a bomb there or not. And we can use the same state for both boards, for player E and for player B, or computer and human, or whatever it is. This seems to be okay. Now we need to figure out how to actually put the ships into the board, how to keep track of those, what are the ship sizes, and where is this ship even positioned on the board. Any ideas how to do it? We know all the data structures we can have, all the basic data structures. So those we already have. So out of those data structures, we need to figure out how to keep track of those things. So let's figure out something. I have no ideas how to do it. Okay, I have some ideas, but I have never ever done it. But I can try to describe to you what is my thinking, and you can definitely improve on it. So in theory, what we need is some kind of something like this. We need a list of ships. So we have some amount of ships on the board, on both one side and on the other side. So A and B, maybe ships A and ships B. What is a ship here? Ship has, let's say, let's try to describe what is a ship in our context. So we have a list of ships. One ship has, I don't know, let's start. Let's say it has a name, definitely. Yeah? Maybe it would be nice to describe it somehow. Does it has a size? Does it really need it?
Shape.
Does it really need that one also? What describes a ship shape here and size?
Which type?
Basically, I think the list of squares where it sits in. So somewhere is configuration that says that, yeah, you need to have, I don't know, let's say, ship. You need a ship like this, yeah? But here, when I actually have this ship already, let's say the name, I can name it like this. This is the name. But what this tells me where the ship is located is 6 squares somewhere on the board. Probably should be continuous, but this is kind of like only the let's say necessity for the nice thing for the humans that ship cannot be distributed like randomly, pieces randomly over the board, so they have to be against each other. So in theory, let's say the simplest way to think here, what I can think out of is this, that I have a list of coordinates where this ship is. So I need 6 squares, basically, somewhere. So those squares they have to be somewhere on the board. And now I can have different ways how to attach this to those square states. The square state currently is what thing? Is it a reference type or a value type? It's a value type, yeah? Since I think we did it as a struct. Since it's a value type, I cannot have here a list of square states, because those will be new square states. They will not be the same that are in the arrays here. So that will not help me. So what I probably need next is a list of coordinates then, like ship locations, x and y. So for that one I need like 6 coordinates. Okay. Since this is mostly internal, I can do those as tuples, for example. I can do them. What else is there? I can make a special struct for it, which just holds the coordinates. Let's say that we do a chords. Which has x and y of integer. Something like this, which means that here will be list of coordinates. Something like this. And this should describe me a ship on the board, in theory at least. So if it's a single ship, let's say it's 1 by 1, then this list has only one element. Let's say this one here, then this will be what is 1, 1 coordinate. So coordinates start from 0. So then that one will be 1, 1. And if I need to check what's the status of the ship, I can go over the coordinates and figure out what is the status currently of the ship. Is it sunken? Is it not sunken? So I can iterate over the board there. All right. No, let's try to write it. Let's add a struct. Coordinate. Let's say this is a property. Int. What is x. Y. And this can be definitely written as a one-liner, probably as this. No? Why not? Why can't I write it like this? ToString is why does it have to be like this?
The parentheses.
Yes, like this. Okay, so now we need to keep track of those ships on the board. So this is probably now, since we don't know what the amount will be, no, it's not the coordinate. What I'm doing. First, we need to describe what the hell is in a ship. So let's describe the ship first. So here we have the list of coordinates. And then we have the list of ships. And this is probably then ships A and ships B. Okay. What does the ship need to do? I probably need to write a bunch of methods here that describes what the ship object is actually doing. Like public int get ship size. What else do we need? Public int, maybe not int, maybe boolean is ship sunken or sunk. Public int get ship. What can I also calculate? How many, what percentage of the ship is still intact?
Why do we need that?
Just to show it in the statistics probably, like on the screen. What the hell is the status of your ship and the enemy ships?
Because some ships don't get sunken by one bomb.
Yes. So each ship sunk is kind of like true false. Basically, if this hits the 100%, then this one goes to true. Get ship. What shall it be?
Health.
Let's say health, status, and question is now
Damage.
in what let's say yeah, damage. Let's say damage count. So this will count how many squares have been hit. So if damage count and ship size are equal, then it's a sunken ship. Okay. So get ship size should be actually really easy. This can be, we don't need any kind of like fancy logic for it. We can just take our coordinates and take the count from it. And this is definitely not public, this is a private. And it's even and there is no getter and setter. Private radio list went away somehow. So now we can implement those methods, get ship damage count and is ship sunk, in different ways. We can first try to do it kind of like manually. No, collection is never updated. Let it be. So get ship damage count needs to calculate how many sunken fields there are. So the ship itself currently doesn't have any idea where it is. So it only has the list of coordinates, but it doesn't have the reference to the board. So probably we need to take the parameter here. So check those coordinates from that board. And probably the same thing here. I also need here the board. So okay, for each. So let's iterate over our coordinates. And we need to count how many there is. So initially it's a 0. If board coordinate x or coordinate y get ship, if this is bomb, then we can increment the count. And here, let's say is sunk equals, let's say it's initially true, maybe. Let's iterate over the coordinates. If in any of the coordinates the bomb is false, if it is not bombed in that place, then at least one square is not hit yet. So I can immediately bail out from here. Return false. Which means that I can just return the true from here. If we didn't find any squares without bombs, so then we bail out from the, or we get to the end of the loop, which means that all the squares had bomb on it, so we can just return true now. So then it's absolutely clear that it is sunken. So now we can try to optimize those methods. Or maybe not really optimize, they will not probably be any faster or any better, but definitely we can write those in the style of language integrated queries and do all kinds of like wheres and stuff like that. And probably even Rider can figure out those for us. Let's see. Convert to link expression. Does exactly the same thing. Coordinates all, which basically means that please iterate over all the coordinates and then execute this method. Coordinate, so take the coordinates as a parameter and then make the validation is bomb true or false. So if all those will be trues, then it's a true. As soon as first is a false, then the loop will stop and nothing, the false is returned. And since this is one-liner, we can write it as a one-liner and get rid of those curly braces and the return statement. Can we do the same here? Yep. We have a method count, which once again a predicate. So counts all the items in the list that fulfill this condition. And since a one-liner, we can change it to the lambda syntax. No, kommenteerida ikka natukene võiks. So let's say count all the items that match the condition. Let's say, let's be correct, predicate. Returns true when all the items in the list match predicate. Okay. Now the only thing that is missing from here is how do you actually add anything here. So the coordinates is currently read-only list created inside the ship. It's private. There's no way to access it. There's no way to add anything to it. So basically I cannot describe where the ship is here. So I can either make the list coordinate a public one, or I can write some kind of method for it, how to actually add anything here. Probably would be nice if I want to write a nice, let's say, safe code, because probably I should check that the ship cannot have two squares in the same coordinate system or in the same coordinate place. So that would be kind of the bad idea. Or maybe if you want to do like I have about vertical ships like this, like submarines standing on the nose. So you need to hit it 6 times in the same place. So then you can do like 3D battleships actually. Yeah, absolutely. So you can think out of the box and make a cube out of your board. So it's not anymore 2-dimensional, it's 3-dimensional, and start to place your ships there. So, but in theory or in practice, let's say, how do we add ships into the board? So we agreed on that one that our ships are something like this, yeah?
Yes.
So no fancy shapes, and they have to be continuous. So it's, what is, not square, but what is in English?
Rectangle.
Rectangle, yeah. They have to be rectangular. So what describes a ship for us?
Size and 1 point steps.
Yes. So we have the size and 1 point. Let's say we need that coordinate here. Where shall it go? And then we need the dimensions. So basically this will describe us where the ship is on the board. Plus then we need to kind of verify that we didn't do anything like this, that the ship is over the edges. So all right, let's write the method for it. Do we already have, when we create the ship, do we actually already know the coordinates for it?
Yeah.
Probably, maybe. Do we need to move the ship around later on? Maybe, if the user wants to move it around with an arrows before placing it. So either it's a constructor parameter or is it something else? Our movement can be done with just with the steps, left, right. Okay, so first we can just think of it as a constructor. So then we can also say that this is also maybe not read-only, but it's in theory it can be a private. It just cannot modify the string from the outside, and it can be just a property. So I need a name for the ship. Then I need the position, which can be just this coordinate. And then I need what? Length and height, yeah? Height. And coordinates. So now we have kind of, I'm hitting the problem that the ship needs to be somewhere on the board. Where is this board again? Because I don't have the board here. I just have like a ship which just has a coordinates. There is no board. So hopefully somebody else will keep track of the board for us. At least I can think of it like that initially. Otherwise, I need to also take the reference to the board here. So let's hope for the best. So coordinate position, int length, int height. So I can do something simple here. So an x. So the upper limit will be what? Position dot x plus, it's a length that way, yeah? And then I have for the other one, this is the y, position dot y plus length plus height. And then I can just say coordinates dot add new coordinate and those can be bars. And maybe I can still, this can be a property. Just the setter is a private. Okay. This almost describes the ship for me, hopefully. So ship has the name, has the list of coordinates. When I create the ship, I can actually give its position and length and height. Add all those coordinates to the list. And then I can do some calculations on the list. What's the count? Or what's the size? So how many squares there are? Get ship damage count, EShip sunk. All right. So there's definitely different ways how to approach to the problem. I can see already in my head that I can do it totally differently also. Okay, but this should work. So now I need a way how to actually add those ships. So I know how to create the ship, but how to add those ships here into the list. And plus I need to figure out how to keep track of the configuration of the game. So how many ships do I even need? Is the game ready to be played? Like, is there enough ships now on the board? So is everything ready to go? So we need to figure out the way how to keep track of what's the configuration even out of those ships. And what is allowed and what is not allowed. So is it allowed for the ships to touch from the on the sides? Can they only touch on the corners, or cannot they touch at all? So what are the kind of different options what the configuration needs to be? So we somehow need to describe what the not the state, but what the configuration for the player in the game, or for the game, let's say. What's the configuration needs to be? All right, so let's think about it, and let's take a 15-minute break. Mida? Teams jääb ekraani, sellest on küll kahju. Keegi võiks ütelda ka selle kohta midagi. Aga seal ei ole kedagi peale mind. Mikk Raba on lahkumas, siit ma näen. See on hea. Jaa. Sellest on küll kahju, jah. Punane raha võiks siiski olla, muidu ta ei salvesta midagi valeke. Okay, so let's take a 15-minute break, and then let's continue. Let's say it's a minimum 15-minute break. Not exactly 15. Hopefully it is a 15. I'll try. I need to eat also something.
Kas see core on põhimõtteliselt üks brain on jah?
Jaa, core brain. Kes ka? Kui meil liiga palju setting'id selle keemi ei ole, siis saab
Ma tean, või kummagi vist tegemata, et haljusad need on muudatud.
ja siis get hash code'i asjad muutub, siis see hash saab ja esitab seda muudatust kodusarvuti selles mõttes, et ta oleks lihtsalt paigutuseks. ja siis ta küsib mind, et backspace ja siis ta see moment pidi seda edasi mängida või salvest midagi.
Equal võib-olla oleks see, siis ta ei saa sama uuesti kui mängida ja kui on võrdne konflikt, siis ta hakkas üle või uut kirjutama, vaid ta lihtsalt viitab sellele.
Ma arvan, et seda hästi liiga
lihtsalt on see võrdle kõiki.
ma tean ta praegu klassiga pärast vaatan. Seda kui rohkem funktsionaalsust ei nõudnud.
Praegu lihtsalt
kõik tegelikult kuni hiljem tuleks, et teised leidse väljund oleks olemas. Mis need on, et üks on see, et teid kõrvale panna?
võib panna, ma ütlen praegu eesti keeles, et aga võib panna
päris uue mängu ja hakkab mängu standardiga, mis
standard on see, et sul ei saa diagonaali
ei ole kaotanud, siis ta vaatab, et mis käib see on paari ülekanne ei ole, et siis kumb mäng ja mäng on, et ta on vastavalt spordi ülekanne või ülekanne siis ja kui vahepeal näete, et see küsiks, et siis ta lahkub see playturnus, et ta küsib game UI-t, see on see, mis tegelikult valimisega see, et sul ei annaks talle positsiooni, kuhu panna ja niimoodi diagonaalis peaks olla see ise kontrollib, kas see on nagu valid division või mitte. Siis ta ütleb sellele positsioonile seal lauas, seda moment, et siis see kehva disaini kohta hakkab võtab selle board'i ja siis nagu laevad uuendab ära, aga ta annab ka message'i tagasi, mis on kõik disain. siis ta võiks ühte asja korraga ja ta võiks kas update'ida või message'i tagasi anda, aga ta võtab mõlemat korraga. siis ta paneb, kuna hiljem tuleb nüüd käiku salvestada, siis ta lihtsalt paneb selle positsiooni, mida pommitati teiste ja siis siit ta jälle küsib tagasi, et kas, see on see, et ta näitab seda tulemust ja küsib, kas tahad seivida. Kui siit nüüd öeldi, et jah, ma tahan seivida, siis järgmisel käigul kui on save exit, siis noh, siin ta peaks tegelikult save'i tegema ja return ära selle asjusse. siis on see suuremas fondis kogu aeg vaatama. kus siis on mängijad, kellel on need laevad, küsimus, kas ta on kaotanud nimi. Iga kord küsitakse, et väikeetist update'i moship järjest kõik läbi. Laev ei ole uputatud. Kui ta on uputatud, siis selle point, et kutsuda update'i on nagu uputatud. Siis update ship'i ja see siis on kõik. Aga vaata. Seda theoreetiliselt võiks kunagi juhtuda. Siia võiks tegelikult panna exception, et ta viskab seda.
Pane mingi sparing.
Siis ta vaatab kõik positsioonid üle. Ja kui on mingi positsioon, mida ei ole tabatud tal, aga laua peal on märgitud, et seda pommitakse, siis ta saab aru, vaata seal on see, mida nüüd tabati. Ja siis ta ütleb, et see oli seda positsioon tabati. Laua peal öeldakse ka, lauale tagasi, et selle positsioonil oli nagu tabatud, et ta ei jõua siin näidata. Siis ta on teatud tagasi, et oli tabatud, kui ta ei anna tagasi, siis breakib siit välja, kontrollib, kas ta on uputatud. Vaatab lihtsalt üle, kas ta kõik positsioonid on pihmad või mitte. Kui on, siis ta ütleb, et on uputatud ja siis tagastab vastavalt, kas hitmist või saab. Tegelikult see kogu mäng. Ma mõtlesin seda loogika välja minna kõik. Sest noh, see ikka väga tegelikult ma eeldan, et siia saab kõik need nõutud asjad juurde lisada. Iganes kodutööd on ilmselt võtsid vaatavast koduda läbi.
Navy nagu teha, mina kas
kahjuks siin on tegelikult ma hakkasin kõike seda tegema, siis on kodutöö.
Mul oli esimene sama, mida
ma hakkasin tegema, et ma lugesin, et millest Serialize. Ma selleks momendis oli kõik see juba tehtud, mis siin oli. Okei. ShipTypes. Mul leiba tehtud.
mina mõtlen
seda, et nagu päris kavatsevad üks saaks olla
ja siis sul on üks custom, mille
see on just panemist.
ma võin ta pooldab.
Mul endal
ei, aga siis võibki see custom, iga see uus loob custom ship'i mingisse riski näiteks, siis player saab ise nime järgi valida.
ma saan selle välja printida kontrollis, üks on nagu numbrid, teine on täpselt.
seda nagu välja näitakse.
aga ma just nagu täpselt numbritesse tagasi minna.
mina mõtlen, kui sul on see custom,
praegu on see lahendatud sellega, et mul tuleb välja
siis ainuke vahe piiratud ship'idega on see, et custom klassid annab
me nagu selles mõttes, et ta visualiseerib mulle need päevad.
teiste on suurus juba see.
Sisestan ikkagi numbrid.
Custom klassil on suurus sisse ja siis põhimõtteliselt mänge saab nimetada
dictionary peale, lihtsalt A0 ja sul on ShipType, mis on, et see on nördidest nagu nördidest.
jaa, aga see peab olema ju põhimõtteliselt lõputud.
või tähendab nii-öelda standard ship'id saad ikkagi
nojah, seal on siis tegema seda tähestikku ära ja siis
hakkab mingi
mingi list customs või midagi.
vaata custom ship'id ja
seda ma ei tea.
kas see positsiooni põhiliselt ei saa?
jaa, aga no see võib ka olla, ütleme, et custom siis
selles mõttes, et sul on see esimene rida ja siis sa mõtled
sul on klass.
ei, sa ei tea, sa kasutad positsioone
okei, sa tegid niimoodi ja ma nüüd sain
ühesõnaga, ma arvan, et ma lähen täna koju. Nutan natuke ja siis viskan selle läpakaga redaktist välja.
Ostad uue
ostan Maci endale ja siis hakkan uuesti ka nullist peale.
Viskad selle aplast.
Kas sa karu?
See mitte configuration option.
The figures are all capital.
Pukid lükkasid lehti kehvasti, ma enne ära mis vaata haigla on iga ju. Et 3 minutit ikka ei saa. Siiamaani on kõik 3 plussiga.
Ei, need
Aga seal
ei, mulle teeb 3 plussi. Aga ma ei tea, mis on 8 on üldse märgis. Mul see hobu oli täiesti perfect. Mul oli isegi ühes kohas oli. Hea, väga hea. Teist kohas 2 noh. Ja, hea.
More than you can afford.
Ma rääkisin sulle, et ma tegin firma, ma tegin lepingu, roll-lepingu. Põhimõtteliselt sa võid ükskõik mis lepingu.
no see on ju tegelikult piiluslepingu tööd, ma olen siia osapoole.
Olgu kas või ehitusfirma.
Ja ma mõtlesin ka, et ükskõik mis on
aga õigus on ikka selline. Nii et seda 8 ei ole võimalik saada.
Ei tea, ma ei taha.
Ja noh, selles, kui sa hakkad mõtlema, siis ongi see miinus on null. Nii et miinus on null. Miinus pluss on 1. Kahendussüsteem.
Aga sul on ju 8.
Ja, et ei pea uuesti salvestama.
Aga miinuse positsioon ka juba.
Aga nagu ma mõtlen jah, et ikka nagu
No ongi.
igale mängule eraldi.
Võta nüüd 0, 0, 0, just nimelt, et diskmatis pole käinud. Viimane on pluss. Ühesõnaga, keegi pole näinud tüüpi, kes oleks 8 saanud.
Ma arvan, me ei näe ka seda. Ei, see on see, vaata nagu kunagi see välis. Siis keegi läheb sealt kurgi ja siis vastus oli, et 50 jumalat.
Ma tahtsin öelda, et see Raspberry annaks endale ka 8.
Siin on see
ma arvan, ta enda oli selle aine tegelikult see tavaline tegemist ei ole teistmoodi ja täiesti projekti töötab. Helista lense, kes on mingi tõe rääkisest lausa vastu. See juhul Spookiga lense rääkida.
Mingi asi prilli külles ka, see katsus möllas justus on politsei.
Pitch point.
Ma mõtlen, et 0 ei loe ühest lugemist. Nullist hakkust. Siis jää järgist 8 tere võimalust saada ja tõesti matemaatiliselt tere võimalust saada.
No kui ta kasutab seda süsteemi.
Mul esimesest töös oli ka mingi nii on
see kontaktid ei pruugi alati.
kurat, ma üritasin selle Verta Veeloga hakata seda.
meil promoti ka seal
ei anna kuidagi see, mis Raspberry seal lehel on programmane, seal vii kasvõi kuradi niimoodi see joon on. Seal võib lõputada kõik kuradi murdisi teha. Tõmbad ainult, siis ta ise kuidagi üritab nagu ära paigutada oma ära järgi. Ja kui sul on hästi õrjedad, siis sa saad niimoodi. Nagu sul hakkab asi nagu sa pead kõik teab, kus kuradi lähed vedama neid asju.
Need on sunnikad, see nagu maast teist. Töötas vahel seal taud. Tema ennast tagasi.
Okei, aga tegelikult see tõenäoliselt
meil on 2 nädalat oota. Näed sellest, et see on võistlus tulemus küll. Aga ikkagi.
minu ideedega sa võib-olla salvestad tema selle position ühes koordinaadis.
Logaritmid hakkavad ka algoritmid ja siis hakkavad ka varsti üles ära minna.
Ja selle põhjal arvutada
lihtsalt ükskord natuke üritasin, aga ei suutnud seda veel tehtud.
ma olen seda täpselt kord tehtud teinud.
Neljanda ma tegin ära. Kolmas ja neljas oli nii palju palju lihtsalt, et ma tegin
kolm tundi ajas tagasi, mis siin on ma tegelikult tean, mida siin teha ei vaata, kas siin 8 päeva tegelikult ikka teha. See oli üks koht, kus ma rõhutasin nagu meetodit
mul oli sama viga teises töös, aga õnneks tegin sellise, ma sain kohe aru, mida sassi on. Ma kasutasin tühikutega maha lõikamiseks, ma kasutasin stripsi.
aga seda ei ole
panen seda trimmi tegelikult. Nii kui ma nägin, siis strip on, ma sain kohe aru, mida sassi on.
seal Java 16 aga näiteks Canvas BMD see jookseb kokku selle nagu palju küll lihtsalt ei saa sellest aru, tegelikult ütleme, et see asi on võimalik ainult Java 16 või rohkem kõrgemas on nagu
ma ei tea, kas ta on failis
Talli ei ole jah kuidagi miskipärast ei saa aru.
aga selles mõttes see peaks nad ikka ümber.
See hea meeldi palju ka, et see on liikvõrd ühe rea.
Siis sai täiesti uuesti selle database.
Ühe rea peal füüsikas, kas on see instants on, mis seal saab midagi kästas.
Ei tea, aga selles mõttes sa ei kutsud lihtsalt ära seda, et see seletakse talle
lihtsalt see.
see ajab taga, et mis kellelgi on kõik lähevad
nende kui liiga, kes suutab teha.
see on lihtne, et see võib teha.
Ei, ma ütlesin.
Laevad arvud, kus on palju laevu alles on.
Ja, see on mul vaja, mis ma ei saa
kirjutab Windowsi või midagi. Aga nagu kui su peamine tegevus ei ole nende vabaduste vähendamine, siis nagu
see on liiga, see tuleb kuskil serverisse üle ka. Muidugi eile see kõik pidi igame selle konsoolist.
asja lõppmõte on see, et peaks töötama niimoodi, et üks mängib konsoolis ja teine netis saab üksteist vastu mängida.
see niimoodi lahendus on seda ma ei ole
oma tegelikult
näitanud seda meile peaks ootama see on halb
ma ei hakka enne seda mõtlema kohale, kuigi ma vist näen Game UI ja see välimusega tegeleb kas küsitakse see UI antakse serverisse või see sama?
ma tegin seda lõpuni lihtsalt, no ma tegin testiraatoris testidel on hoopis teine. aga lõpuks tuli välja, et ma olin vahepeal
see ju, mis need olid?
me siiamaani veelgi teada võib-olla lihtsalt saab
muutunud juurde, ma otsin selle tooni üle. See kogu mõtlemine täiesti.
Rikaste või vaasliinimeste kirjutatud keeles.
olukorda just niimoodi, et selle praegu HTML-i ja pärast
aga mul on selle mängu fiidima, et nimetatakse kõik samasse sisse kaks erinevat keelt on üles failis.
tegelikult ei pea see
tal ei ole nagu pool
aga see lüüakse lahkuda
või player hoid board'i kaks playerit player class on
vähemalt siin ma olen samasugune joone.
ja enemy board'i ja player name
mul on enemy board
tema
kõige raskem
GameBoard juhuslikult tema
vähendab kogu see süsteemi võib nõuda päris suure koguse asja ümber.
jah, aga samas tegelikult lihtsustatud kui mis teksti failiga
aga praegu juba praegu mõtlete sinna pärast see baasi sest selle jooksul seda kinni kiiluda muster
nii , jah , pange selle listid ka mingi natukene . Okay, so let's try to figure out our next moves. What shall you do? So even before we can set up anything, we need to define our configuration. So what is the configuration? Let's add, we can think in the code also directly. Let's say it's a GameConfig, yeah? What do we need? First we have the board size, yeah? Board width, board height. Okay. Then we need, what else? Basically we need list of ships, and we need the configuration for the how the ships are allowed to place on the board. Okay, so what's the list of ships? Basically, since everything is free here, so it's just a list, and the ship is described by the width and height, and this is it basically, and the name, of course. Okay, this ship here is already ship object, so this one has already coordinates and stuff like that. So let's add one more class. Let's say ShipConfig. So it has a string name. And the same widths and heights. So it's a ship width and ship height. So then this has a list of those configurations. Where do you want to keep the quantity of ships? Do we keep so many instances in the list, or is it a number here inside the ship config? Like you shall have one of destroyer of the size 2x6. You shall have two of cruiser, whatever size that or that. So is the quantity here inside the ship config? Probably. Okay, we have the ship configuration. Then game configuration has the board width, board height. All the different ships with the quantities are listed here. The amount is unlimited. We don't have any idea how much there will be. And we have the condition that how can we place the ships onto the board. Are they allowed to touch on the sides? Are they allowed to touch on the corners? Or are they not allowed to touch at all? So those are kind of like theory. In theory, we have 3 options. So this seems to be some kind of enum. So let's add enum for it. Ship, what it is?
Touch rules.
Ship touch rules, yeah. Rule as maybe, or is it rule? Let's say first we have no touch. Corners. Touching. Sides. Let's say it's a corner touch. Side touch. Okay, so EShip, probably it's in singularity, EShipTouch rule. And the classical is the kind of the no touch. For width is classical is 10 and 10. And we can even create the kind of the base ship configuration. Name is something. Quantity is 5. Ship height is 1. Ship width is 1. Patron. What's the name of this? So there was 5 of those, 5 different ships. Quantities go down one by one. And ship width starts to go up.
Shouldn't it be length, not height?
Yeah. I'm saying that's a ship length. And the names, the biggest one is a carrier. And then I have the battleship, submarine for whatever reason, cruiser, and the patrol. Excellent. Ja. Nii. Täna ei saa, annan loengut ülikoolis, mul on klassiõpilasi täis. Ja homme palun näituseks või millal iganes, aga mitte täna. Okei, teeme nii, aitäh. Tule anna veered, nüüd ja kohe. Alright, so we have our game configuration. So when our brain starts, what will happen with the configuration? Do we already have it? X size, Y size. Shall the configuration be ready before the brain starts? Most likely yes.
Yeah.
So we can say that this is the game configuration, and even the X size, Y size here, those are actually should be here in the game configuration. Board width and board, let's say, length, then try to be consistent with that one. So we actually have GameConfig here. Board width, and it's what I'm doing. Let's agree on the terms now. It's not that. It's a length and a height.
Length and width.
Length and width or height?
Pikkus ja laius. Length and width. Ja pikkus ja kõrgus.
Yeah, debatable.
So how are we doing vertical ships?
Let's say, let's try it this way. We can say that, let's say,
Mathematical terms.
let's do this then. Size X, size Y. And let's do the same here. Ship width, which we use it. Ship, the length is always 1. So this is the ship size Y, and then this one will be ship size X.
Shouldn't it be reverse?
Doesn't matter actually here because you can rotate your ship whichever way. So here it actually doesn't matter. So here they always, X is always 1 and the size Y will grow. Or should it be the other way around? That X grows and the Y stays. So now they're like this. Doesn't matter because they're actually in the placement you can like rotate them. So yep, maybe they should be in the other way around correctly. So I can rename them again. So this will be 2x's. This will be just 1x. And now I can rename this to the y. Okay, now the x value will grow. So now it's port size X, config, port size Y. So when this one starts, it starts with new GameConfig, which just gives me the default values. Okay. So now in theory, I need to do what? Basically write the UI first, how to set up the configuration. So ask for the board size, give me the X, give me the Y, or the size X, size Y. Give me define the different ships. What's the name for the ship? What's the name of the type of the ship, let's say, not the exact name. And then what's the ship dimensions. And then I can actually create my GameBrain with those configurations. All right. So the next probably complex thing to solve is how to actually place the ship onto the board. So both players, let's say it's a 2-player game, let's say 2 humans, yeah? Or even if it's just a computer against a human or computer against a computer, you need to figure out the way how to place the ships onto the board. It's probably the easiest with the humans. Initially we can do something really simple and not verify anything, or just verify it later, and just ask from the human that, hey, please give me the configuration, give me the upper square where it has to be. So give me this coordinate, and then give me the length and width, or the X and Y, whichever you want to now rotate your ship basically from that coordinate. And we need to figure out that those have to match. So the length of this and length of that, or the number or the value for it, has to match what the ship type currently is. So you don't create randomly some kind of like new unexpected ships. And then you have to verify that actually correct quantity of those ships has been placed onto the board. So this is kind of understandable what to do. So bunch of logic has to be written, bunch of verifying that are the things working as expected, but nothing too complex about it. Then of course I see here that we start to repeat ourselves a little bit. We have the board A and ships A, and then the board B and ships B. Probably I could add those together into the I don't know, player A and player B. So make a one encompassing class which holds both of those values. Will be a little bit easier maybe, or more understandable. Okay, so the next kind of the main thing is that we actually need to save and load our game. So we need to somehow write all this stuff down to the disk system or the file system, and then when the program is launched again, we have to provide to the end user that, hey, here is the list of your files or the saved games, and let's continue from somewhere. Please give me the name of the file somehow. Either you ask it as an input, or you do kind of like nice UI that you can run with up and down arrows over the file names, or you ask for the, I don't know, give me the file number or whatever. So different ways, and then you need to load back whatever is going on there. So, and initially we save everything into the file system. So different ways how to save the stuff into the file system. You can do something really manual if you really want to. You can basically open up the file, which is just a bunch of bytes, and then figure out everything how to write bytes into the file system or into the file. This is one way how to do it, but this is definitely a complex way how to approach it. The other way is something which is called serialization. Have you heard it?
Yes, sir.
I mean, has somebody taught you anything about it?
Yes.
Rääkisega õpetanud, all right. But at least you have heard the term.
Yes.
So, serialization and deserialization. So, idea is kind of simple. How to do it is maybe a little bit more complex, but there's ready-made libraries for it, so we don't have to do it manually. The first thing you need to think about, or how to understand, what to understand about serialization, is that you can only serialize data, not code. So that's the first thing. So you can save data and load data back. You cannot serialize methods or code, or okay, in theory, if you really want to, you can trick it somehow, encode your stuff into, I don't know, base 64 and copy the bytes from the memory over and do like all kinds of weird stuff. But this is not really any more serialization. So the kind of the classical serialization is that we try to take our n-dimensional data or some kind of data object and write it out to the file system, or not necessarily file system. Maybe we will just send it as an email attachment or something. But basically, we will try to make, in the simplest sense, a text copy of it. So now, when we start to make a text copy of it, then the question is how to make a text copy of it. So what kind of data format to use? So for that, we have, and this is what we will use also in the next semester, we have basically two wide data formats used. So one is JSON and the other one is XML. So basically, those two are kind of the most common ways how to serialize your data. Third option is that you can do it somehow manually and write your own strings. So do your own kind of like weird data format, but what for? And typically nowadays, most of the applications we do normally are using JSON data format. If you move to the industry, to some kind of finance world, then it's XML, of course, mostly, or depends. JSON is also coming there also, but most of the kind of like heavy finance applications or business applications are purely XML based. So there's lots of XML moving around. And JSON is a little bit simpler and shorter format, although it has its own problems. So let's look into the theory a little bit, and then let's start to write your next homework, or see what to do with that one. So we have this, and this we will use now a lot. And we only have quite a limited number of data types, and JSON is a final standard. Nothing will be added here into the JSON. JSON is finalized, it's standard, this is it. There will be no JSON 2.2 or something like that. So JavaScript object notation is the acronym. So we only have those things. We have a string, we have a number. Number is actually, there's no difference between integers and floats. So number is just a number. We have an object, we have an array. Really, really important now is this. Arrays can only be one-dimensional. So JSON only has one-dimensional arrays, nothing else. You can have jagged arrays, array of arrays, but this doesn't make it multi-dimensional array. You can fake it kind of, but actually the arrays are one-dimensional in the JSON world. Then we have true and false and null, and this is it. Everything has to be described with those data types. So whatever you have, your date times, whatever else weird stuff, this has to be encoded into the string probably somehow, or maybe into the number, depending on what your date time is. Mostly anything is an object anyhow. All the lists and stuff like that will be arrays. Booleans have concrete value, so there is no Boolean type, because when you serialize it, it's clear what the value is for the Boolean. So there is only just the values defined, true and false, and something can be also null. So if the value is unknown, then it can be null. And there are no types in the JSON. So you don't define that if something is null, then you don't define that what the type of the field is. The type is null. So it's a null type with the value null. And this is it. So when you restore it, or when you read the data back, you have to restore the null back to the correct type, what it is actually. So for example, C# doesn't have type true and false, so it's a Boolean. And null is not a type at all in the C#, so there has to be some kind of reference type that will take a value null. So this is up to us. So this is how it looks like. So this is how the JSON data will look like when you actually save it to the disk and take a look at the text file that was produced. So this is starts as an object. So I should probably zoom into here. So you need always to carefully look how the JSON starts. So if you see those curly braces, this means that this is a JSON object. So object contains list of properties, the same as in the C#. Property names are as a strings. So this is the property name, and this is the value. Since the value is a string, then the type is a string. And then we have this property here, subjects. This is an array, and seems to be that it's an array of strings. Actually, in the JSON, the array can be array of anything. So that we need to discuss in the JavaScript course. But normal people, at least, when they serialize something into the JSON, the array is of a list of similar, or let's say, the same type of objects, or whatever is there. Actually, everything is the same type. Although the JSON standard actually allows you to keep like random things in the array, weirdly. So this is something which is allowed in the JavaScript, because JavaScript doesn't keep the type with the variable itself. The type is there only with the data. So when you look at what the data is for the variable, then you can figure out what the actual type of the data is. But this is for the next semester. So at least in the C#, kind of, if we serialize something into the array, and then when you read it back, C# only can have an array of one concrete type. It cannot be like random stuff. So then we have those two terms, serialization and deserialization. So that you need to do a lot in your future courses and in any kind of programming. So we need to convert an object into the byte stream and then save it to the disk or send it somewhere. And deserializing means that we take the byte stream and make an object out of it again. And now we have in .NET, since the .NET Core 3, which is now already a few years ago, we have a built-in serialization. So this system.text.json and .serialization gives us all the functionality. And this is strongly typed, although we can do all kinds of tricks with it. But basically we first need to declare what our data type or data will look like, and then we can try to deserialize. Serialization works just like that with anything. But since when we want to move data in and out of C#, we need concrete types, so everything here is typed for us. And this is what it looks like. So we can first set up some serialization options if we want to. So to make it look nicer, maybe. Typically, when you actually send data from machine to machine, you don't want those like nice formatting, because those are just adds some extra bytes. So unnecessarily using disk space. But if you want to debug your stuff and look, take a look with your human eyes, what the data is, then it's definitely useful. So this write intended kind of makes it easier to read. And when we tell to the serializer that, hey, please serialize our object, then it just happily converts it into the string. So makes a byte stream, and since JSON is purely text-based, this can be printed out to the console or saved to the disk, or anything like this can be done with this. And you can see what the data will be. So initially we have, let's go back here. We have the date, which is the type of date time. and when it's serialized, it's an UTC string. Temperature was some kind of double or float, so this will end up as a number, and the summary was a string, so this will be a string in the final JSON. And we can do the same thing again the other way back. So we can grab the JSON string, either from the disk or just define it as it is defined here in the code. And now comes the important part. When we deserialize it, when we say that, hey, please make an object out of this string, then this uses generics to describe what the object will be that it tries to do. And if the structure doesn't match, then Serializer will be, or deserializer will be unhappy and tell you that, hey, cannot match the stuff. What shall we do? Well, not what shall we do, but it will be an exception and fix your problems so that the stuff will match, actually. So this seems kind of like pretty straightforward stuff what to do. And just for the information, we also have something which is called the Newtonsoft JSON library. So for example, Newtonsoft supports multi-dimensional arrays. Actually fakes it. So it still uses, like, because JSON doesn't allow multi-dimensional, there isn't such a thing. It writes out a jagged array, but kind of hides it from you. Newtonsoft is now considered, let's say, obsolete, or it's like third party. So we don't allow to use it in this or next course, so we stick to the standards. So don't try to fake that you can serialize multi-dimensional arrays, or you need to do it yourself manually. And one thing, what will happen quite easily with your data is that you will hit circular references. That you need to also figure out how to handle. So if you have two objects, A and B, A points to the B and B points to the A, then how can you serialize it? Because you will get like forever loop. So it's totally okay in memory. So you can keep objects in memory that reference each other. There is no issue with that one. But when you try to write it out to the disk, what will you write? Like till the disk is full or what? So all those JSON libraries actually check for it. There, I think maximum depth is typically 32. So if they hit more than 32 loops, they will crash and or not crash, but throw an exception and tell you that, hey, what the hell are you doing? Then, in theory, most of those JSON libraries allow you to describe what to do with circular references. So you can actually serialize those. It's not allowed to do here in this class or in this course, because this will make basically unstandard JSON. Okay, JSON itself is standard, but it's really hard to deserialize the JSON back to the object then, because it will have basically pointers and primary keys and stuff like that. So it will add a reference from one object to the next object. So this will end up as a mess. So in theory possible, not allowed in practice here. And then we need a file I/O. So we need to actually read and write here. And this is also pretty straightforward. If you go to the system.io.file, then you have a bunch of methods like list files on the disk, open file, read file as a text, write text to the file directly. So all kinds of like classical file operation methods. There's nothing like much to discuss here. Just type file dot and you can see all the fancy stuff you can do there. So this is your next kind of homework. You need to save your configurations, create configurations, save configurations. So you have a bunch of pre-configured games, or not games, but configurations on the disk. You can just load those. And then you can create your game with loaded or created configuration. So let's try to do something like this. my game, BattleShip console app. So I will first comment out everything from here. And let's see, what can I do? First, I probably need to figure out where the hell am I? So where is actually my code running? When this thing starts, what's the actual directory where I'm located? It's not totally clear where will be this program actually executed. So can we somehow see where we are? So let's see what this system IO will offer us. Directory, what's the delete, exist, move, get files, get directories, get directory root. What is this thing? Returns the volume information root, set current directory. What's there with the current? Oh, get current directory. Gets the current working directory of the application. Nice. So let's write out. Seems that the directory is something like this. So it's actually BattleShip console app bin debug net 5.0. So it's somewhere in the depths of this catalog. So those are actually those bins and debugs, or bin and object folders that you are not supposed to add to the Git. Yeah? They have to be listed in your Git ignore. So this kind of doesn't seem the nice place where to keep our stuff, because this will even not be committed to the Git. So we need to figure out some better way. So let's try to add here a directory and see, can we access that one?
Can we access the user's home directory in C#?
Definitely. It's not in the C# itself. Let's say configs. But you can definitely try to access the tilde.
Okay.
And write or open files via the tilde.
Does it also work on Windows?
Yeah, should. This should give you the home directory no matter what the operating system. At least hopefully. Okay. So but I need to get a reference to this configs directory, and I have no idea where it actually is, because this depends where the compiled code will be run. So it can be run in here, but if you do some kind of like .NET run or .NET build, then you get actual binary and you can already start with the binary. So I have actually no like decent way how to figure out where this configs directory is listed. So the only way what I can figure out, or what I can think of, is this edit configurations, and we have program arguments. So this means that I can add it as a program argument. So let me grab this one from here. And add it as a program argument. Let's say the root directory of my application. So let's see what the arguments will be now. Can I do args.length? There should be at least one now. Can I actually write out the 0th one? So the first one in the list. There's 2. And there's this. So what problem did I hit now? Why do I have 2 arguments? Can you see?
Space.
Yes. Don't use spaces in your directory names. Don't use friggin' letters. Don't use Cyrillic windows. And stuff like that. This will cause problems. And I'm not even so sure what can I do with that one. So I somehow need to encode this one here, the space in the middle of the name. How can I encode it? Can I do something like this? That should actually be a space in the coded way. No, now I will get this one here. If I will put it inside the quotes, will this help me?
Code,
Or some kind of quotes? I'm not so sure.
Code works.
No, that one also doesn't help me. But I use the ticks. If I use quotes, will this help me? Yep, that one works. So at least this one is built into the system that if you use quotes, then it is considered as a 1 parameter. A little bit better. Okay, so this will give me the base path. So I can do now something like this. Let's say private static string base path. So if the argument's length is equal to 1, then let's use the whatever is the first one in the list. Otherwise, let's fall back to the correct directory. Okay. So we have our game configuration, and we can try to serialize that one first. So first we can try to just print it out to the screen. So something like this. JsonSerializer, serialize, and then the object. Serialize. And JsonSerializer doesn't care about the types. It can serialize everything, so we just provide it with an object and be happy with that one. And we can also add those nice options, how to write it out. But if you don't add anything, then we will get default values. So let's look what the default looks like. So we got this. So board size, ship configurations is a list of objects. Every object is this ship configuration. Yep. And EShipTouch rule is 0. So all the enums are actually numbers in the C# world. And if you want to do it nicely, then we can also create this JsonSerializer options. And maybe the only thing we want is this right indented, so it formats it nicer. And then the JSON options is the second parameter. And this will just make it easier to read for our eyes. Doesn't change the data anyhow, or in any way, just adds line feeds and tabulation or spaces actually. But it's easier to read. Okay. So let's try to write it out. Let's say something like this: file standard config. It's a file name, let's say. And now we need to write our standard configuration out. Let's say var conf str. So now we have it as a string. And now we can try to write it out. Let's see, what options do we have? System.io.file.append text, create text, open text, append all text, read all text, write all text. Creates a new file, writes the specified string to the file, and then closes the file. If the target file already exists, it's overwritten. This seems to be the correct thing we want. The only thing I now need is a string path. So where to actually write it out. Let's see. So the other parameter was the string itself. So the contents. So this is our conf JSON string. But the first parameter is the file name. So it's the fully qualified location of the file. So we can try to glue it together. So grab the base path. Let's see what's the base path, doesn't have the slash at the end. So base path plus. And now I need to figure out which way are the slashes. Depends on the operating system, because on the Windows they are in the one direction, and on the Linux and Mac they are in the other direction. So this can be either that way or that way. Windows actually supports both. So it kind of works out of the box, but not always, and not in all the libraries.
Doesn't work on all versions of Windows.
Yes, and doesn't work on all versions of the Windows. Does work on the latest one, let's say. On the older Windows, definitely doesn't work, so can cause like weird problems. So we need to do something with that one here. So there's different ways how to handle the problems with the different file systems. One way is probably to do it, try to do it manually. So we can try to do something like this: system.io. I think it's maybe in the directory. Get file system entries. No, doesn't seem to be here. There should be somewhere a thing called some kind of separator. No.
Fast.
Was there a path? Yeah, there's path. Yes, there's path separator. Or directory separator char and volume separator char. I think it's the path separator that we want. And then the name of the file. And if you want to be nice about it, then you should probably actually check that the file is not there, and only then create it. If it is there, then skip it.
But write all text already does that, doesn't it? Write all text already does that.
No, write all text just replaces it. If it's there, then it's overwritten. Creates a new file. If the target file already exists, it is overwritten. Do we want to overwrite it always? Maybe not. Maybe we want to kind of like save the default configuration initially and then modify it, and then not to overwrite it. So the default can be different for you. So probably it's nice to check that if the file is there. So I can already glue it actually together here. So then I only have one file name moving around. System.io.file probably exists. So if that one doesn't exist, then let's create it. Paste path, and can I reload it from here? Refactor this. How can I refresh it? No? No, can I do it reveal in the, okay, I can do reveal in the finder. And there's nothing there. Why? Oh, because I'm not using the config directory. So I did mess up my file name. So it's base name plus separator plus configs plus again the separator. So now I should get it in the correct location. Hopefully. Not even know what I'm doing wrong. Use a something public C# demo.
Doesn't exist.
BattleShip. No, then it should go here and then tries to write it. Let's see. Do we have this one here? Saving default config. What's wrong with me? No, it doesn't save it anymore. Basepath separator config separator standard JSON. So what I'm doing wrong?
That's separator
Aha!
is
I got this. Path separator is a different thing. It's not the path, it's a directory separator. What the hell is? Oh, path is the path variable. So now I should get the correct one. Yep, saving default config. And yes, finally I got this standard JSON. Interesting, where did it create those previously, those files? Where did those go with those weird file names? Okay, so this gives you the ability to first create JSON files, so to serialize an object into the JSON, and then you can, now if it's there, you can try to read it back. So let's try to do that one also. So first we need to check that the file is actually there. Let's say loading config. System.io.file. Some kind of read all text. No, what does it actually do? Read all lines, read all... No, read all text gives you just one string. Yes, that's exactly what we need. And now we need to, when we have it, we need to restore the object. So we actually already have the configuration here, so we can just replace that one. Conf equals, and now we need to deserialize it. So JsonSerializer dot deserialize. And we use the strongly typed version. So we know what our type will be. So this will be our GameConfig. Please give me that one. And from this text. And we can now try to print it out again. Console.writeLine. And serialize it again with those options. And since we already have the file, it shouldn't be any more, we can now modify it manually. Yep, now it's here. Let's say I want to have my board size 100 by 100. And name of the last ship is carrier XYZ maybe. I'll say carrier 1 by 1. Yep. Now the object is different. Since we modified it manually on the in the disk or on the disk. Then when we load it back, it's serialized correctly or deserialized correctly, and now we have the different configuration. So with the different port size and whatever else is there. This gives us like nice options we can do. Can I use it internally? Can I do this? We have the game configuration, so let's overwrite here the toString. Can I do something like this? I have never tried. Can I just serialize this? And I also need the JSON options. Let's grab those nicely. Yeah, I can serialize myself inside toString. So this means that here I can now just do console write line conf. And I should get exactly the same result. Just now it's done inside the toString. Yep. Nice cheap way how to write out complex objects. Just serialize it into the JSON internally and you're done. Okay. So this gives you the support and ability to serialize anything into the JSON and then deserialize it. Now you hit the next problem. You need to actually save your game state. So the configuration is kind of obvious. So you need to write the UI, so the menu system, add the new configuration. So then you ask all those parameters, board sizes, whatever else, how many ships, what names. Then you start the game, and now you need to save the game. So when you start to save the game, then we hit the problems. How can we actually save the game? Since we should probably hit the problem that we have the multi-dimensional array there, and the multi-dimensional array cannot be serialized normally. Let's try. Do we actually hit the problem? Yep. So we can grab the brain. Let's make here a new directory. Let's say save games. And let's try to serialize the brain, whatever is there, into the save games. If we try to do it from here directly, what will happen? So we need our file name. Let's say file name save. So it's not anymore configs, it's save games. Just a game initially. So I'm just trying to see what will happen. And now we can create the data for it. You can use the same string. I know. Okay, let's name it JSON string. And we try to serialize the brain. And we can just write it out. Doesn't even need the file actually. Empty. We got just an object. What for? Brain, JSON options. We have our BSBrain. Why is it empty? Any ideas? What can be actually serialized?
Public data.
Exactly. Only public data, only public properties, public lists, whatever else can be serialized. Since our brain doesn't have probably anything public, only some methods, and methods you really cannot serialize. So board square state doesn't really kind of serialize anything. So of course we can try to do this get board. Int player no, let's say grab the 0. Let's see what will happen with that one. And it crashed. As expected. So why did it crash? The type, BattleShip brain, board square state is not supported. Although it's kind of not really understandable what's the issue here. But the issue here is this comma here.
It's a multi-dimensional array.
It's a multi-dimensional array. JSON doesn't have multi-dimensional arrays. You cannot serialize anything with multi-dimensional arrays. So we need to figure out the way how to actually either convert it or use a different data type or do whatever we want to do, but basically we cannot use an arrays when we want to serialize those into the JSON. So we need to do something else. And actually I would like to kind of deserialize the brain itself. So let's see, what can we do with the brain? Is there some kind of like functions here we can use? Override. Is there a serialize something? Serializable attribute? Doesn't seem like that. Equals toString get hash code, and this is it. Okay, seems to that we need to do it ourselves. So let's say public string get board, okay, get brain, I don't know, JSON maybe. And the other way, public string restore brain from JSON. And this one is not a string, it's a void. So we need to do it internally. So this is probably not the correct representation of our internal state. So we need to figure out what the hell is our internal state and how to even save it. So what do we have? We don't have the configuration anymore. So configuration is used once and then it's gone. So basically when our stuff is done, we have those parameters. Board A, board B, and 2 lists of ships. And seems that those 2 will be glued together, or should be glued together. So we have the kind of like the A board and the B board. Or let's say player 1 and player 2 or something like that. What more do we need? We need to keep track of who will be the next player. Let's say let's add also that one here. Private is the int or is the boolean? Can be boolean because basically it's true or false. Let's say what it is. player 0 turn or something like that. And if we want to, we should probably make a single object out of this, board A and board B. So let's describe what the board is. So it's a class, and it's just called the board. Let's say GameBoard. And it has those two variables. So this can now be a public. And it actually has the getters and setters. So list needs an import. This is also public. It's actually board. So this will be a ships. So now I have basically two game boards. And now the question is, where do I keep those game boards? Will those be like two separate variables, like player A, player B? Or I can just keep those in the list, for example, or in the array. I can even keep those in the array, basically. So we know that this game is always fixed to 2 players. There aren't any more. There's just 2 of those. So we can do something like this. Private game board. It's 1-dimensional array. Can it be like this? How do I initialize the game now? Board A, board B. Or should it be empty with just the 2 items, or it's just a list? So there's like different ways how to approach it. All those different options can be used. Doesn't matter. Do I do an array? Can I do a list, or will I just use those board A and board B variables? What is the best option? And what is the most logical option? How do you want to keep your game boards? Board A, board B? What would make the accessing it most easier? Because we need to swap around. If you use board A and board B, then you basically have to write some kind of if sentences. Then it's maybe then not the simplest to check what is going on, because probably we need to check based on this, who is the current player. So maybe it's even better to do something like this, private int.
What if you want more than 2 players?
Current, no, there's always 2 players in this game. Even if it's computer against the computer, there's still 2 players. So current player, no, we can do something like this. This is 0. So then we can access it via the index. So we can always use the current player no as a reference to the array. Can we use something, what is allowed here? So we can do something like this. and when the game initializes, when you have the configuration for it, we can now actually create those game boards. We have the board and we have the ships. So this one equals actually with this one. Board square state, copy of board. Okay, this is based on the not on the current player no, but you can ask with the player no from here. So it's we can simplify now this one because we can now use the direct reference like this. Makes it a little bit easier already. Okay, but this doesn't yet give us anything really useful. We still need to figure out how to serialize our board. What is it? So any ideas?
Secure state and keep it as a string and just that so the getBrain.JSON and if we just add it as a string.
No, the kind of you can do like all kinds of stuff probably. The first thing is what to do with this. So how do we serialize that one? Since it's a two-dimensional array and JSON doesn't support two-dimensional arrays.
Convert it to a string.
Yeah, the JSON will be finally string, but how do we convert it into the string? So there's different ways. It's easy to convert it into the list of lists, for example, or array of arrays. So the first question is, do we even internally, do we want to keep it as a two-dimensional array? Or shall it be jagged array already in our game? So if there's jagged array inside our game, then there's like no issue. So jagged arrays are totally okay to serialize. But kind of like, I kind of like this, like two-dimensional array. This is what the board is. It is a two-dimensional array basically. If I look at the paper, there it is. It is a two-dimensional array. It's not an array of fixed length of arrays. So we need a way how to convert this board square state or even this game board into something more useful for the JSON serialization. So how do we deal with this game board? So we can write some kind of like toString or JSON implementation here. Or we can try to do it somewhere here inside the GameBrain. But basically what we need is we need to transfer our object from one shape to the other shape. If it starts out as an array, multi-dimensional array, we need to convert it into the lists or something else that is actually useful for us. So it's a little bit more accessible, at least for the JSON. So we need some kind of save game. Let's make a new object here that will actually describe what we need. Let's say save game data transfer object. So this is data transfer object. And you will see those a lot next semester. A lot. because we need to start to program distributed systems, and we need to send data from one system to the next system, and there's always some kind of different format used in different levels of program, so we need to convert our data from one shape to the next shape all the time. So let's say we can do something really like simple here. So the game board is Foursquare state temp. Basically, can we say this? It will be a list of this. And it's actually a game board. So we need here also some kind of helper class. We can do it internally. Can we use inheritance here? So this will be, so let's say it's a GameBoard.ts. Can we derive it from the game board? And then we want to replace this one here. So this is public virtual. So please replace this one. The ships are okay. This is list ship, so this is probably okay. Ship has the name, list of coordinates. Yeah, this is serializable as it is. So this has to be now public. Oh, no. What did you do? Just override. I think I cannot do something like this because the types now don't. You cannot change the return type when overriding. No, this is not allowed. So I can only do the new here. I want to replace that one totally. So the virtual doesn't work here. Okay, that one saved. And then we need from the brain, what else do we need to serialize? We have the game boards and this one. So it's public, and this is also public. You can also declare those as not in this place. Also getters and setters if I want to. Okay, now we can try to do something and see what we get. So we have now this save game object, data transfer object. So can we use it now, even before we move any data over to it? So I want to return this save game data transfer object. And now I want to serialize it. and I also need those options if I want to do it kind of like nicely. Alright, let's see what we'll get. Is this something more useful? No? It crashed somewhere? Oh, we don't use those methods yet. So getBrain.JSON. So we don't need that. Okay, let the file name be, but we create the JSON now inside our GameBrain directly. No. Object reference not set to an instance of object. Really? What? What? What I'm doing now? New brain. New GameConfig. And I even don't need the new GameConfig, but actually have it restored, so it should be something like this. What is the exception? Brain, get brain JSON, brain JSON, return JSON string. So let's debug it. What will happen where? Maybe here also. Let's see, what is null actually? Configuration we have. Oh, okay, this is the wrong thing. No, deserialize, yes. Yes. Yeah, that's okay, it's an object. Port size X, yep, that's totally okay. So maybe the problem happens here. I should actually arrive now here. GameBoard.0.board. Oh, the board is not initialized, exactly, because this is empty. Those are nulls. Yes, I can see now what the problem is. So I actually first need to do this one equals new GameBoard. And this one also. Is this no better? No?
No.
But almost. The type BattleShip brain board square state is not supported. Oh, it's still there as a public property. Okay. So my inheritance doesn't work really as I want to. So the board is still actually there. So I need to do it without the inheritance. It's not the new anymore. So now it should work. No. And this is actually also with the capital C. Yeah, okay, what's now the problem? Does type BattleShip brain board square state, where does it hit that one? What? Let's see. Get brain JSON goes here. And we try to serialize the DTO. This is the SaveGameDTO. The type BattleShip brain board square state. Where does it take that one? Oh, from here, of course. It's an array of GameBoard.ts. Shall be this one. Yep, now I got it correctly.
Why do you do it in the first place?
Because I referenced the wrong thing here. I created this class, GameBoard.ts, but I wasn't using it inside the SavedGameDTO. Now I'm almost there. So it's current player now is 0. Okay, that's fine. And GameBoard's null and null because nothing is initialized. So we need to copy stuff over. And then we are happy with that one. So let's say maybe I still can use the inheritance. Maybe I was too hasty. So let's put the game board back here. So this one has to be a new here. I know. Got the exception, yes. Yep, now we're back to board square state. So can't use the inheritance here. And now we need to just set up the variables correctly. And now we have the next kind of topic here we need to cover. How much time do we have? Like 30 minutes? 15? Okay. So let's go over a little bit more theory. Which is this? Nullable reference types. So far we have used value types and reference types. And reference types can be always set to the null. So this causes lots of problems in our code actually. So when we set something to null, we can always hit the programs that we try to access something from the null value. So we write something like null dot, or the object is null, so we write something like GameBoard dot, and then the program will just crash unexpectedly. So we need to start to check that is something actually there or is it not there. And write a bunch of either if sentences or then those nice like null coalescing operators and all kinds of stuff like that. So this gives us not weird, but this gives us all kinds of problems over the lifetime of our code and causes weird problems. So what Microsoft has done now, or what was not Microsoft, but what was added to the language, is something which is called a nullable reference types. So nullable reference types is purely syntactic sugar, doesn't do anything for us over the long run, doesn't do anything when the program is actually running. But what it does for us is that basically the same thing, for example, what TypeScript is doing in the Java, that we need to tell when we declare something in C#, that is this thing allowed to be null or not. And if you tell to the compiler that, hey, this thing does not, is not allowed to be null, then we can get rid of all those unnecessary checks that if it is null or if it isn't null. So when we promise to the compiler that, hey, this thing definitely cannot be null, never ever, we guarantee it, then the compiler is happy and says that, okay, you don't need to check. And then it also gives us the confidence the other way around. If we tell to the system that, hey, this string here or this variable or anything else can be a null, then the compiler starts to nag on us that, hey, you are not checking the value here, you are not checking the value there. Are you totally sure? Because you told me somewhere that this thing might be null, and now you are just trying to access anything from it directly, and this causes probably causes a crash during the runtime somewhere, because you promised to me that this thing, in theory at least, can be a null. So to solve this problem, we now have this nullable reference types, and we can actually tell to the compiler that, hey, how the stuff works. And so this basically tells us what can we do. Is it a null or is it not a null? And the warning that yes, this is purely compile time feature. And this starts with C#8, so it's now already quite a few years old. All the system libraries have been written using the support for it, so we don't have to do anything fancy for the system-wide support. Everything is there, and we need to just enable it in our own solutions. And this is actually mandatory. So in all the C# courses, this is something you have to use. And to turn it globally on, you need to create one file named directory.build.props. You can do it on the project by project basis also. Just go to the configurations. So you can do this. For example, take the properties, and we have here this nullable reference types, and you can turn it into the enable. But this is kind of like annoying because you have to do it manually in every project. So to make it a little bit faster and quicker, we can do this. Where's my C#? That one. So in the root folder where the solution file is, I can initially touch the file, so it's created. The name is this, directory.build.props. And now I can actually edit it and paste the stuff into it that's listed here. One more trick I can show you. Here in the solution level, do the right click, add a new solution folder, typically called something like solution items. This is not an actual folder, it's just a kind of like virtual grouping. And now I can do here, add existing item, and point out this directory.build.props. So I can actually now see the file here in my editor. I can open it. And what this will tell to the system compiler globally that, hey, please use the latest language version. So whatever the C# currently is latest, we want to use that one. Enable the nullables. And then this line here, warnings as errors, basically tells to the system that, hey, if you hit any of those nullable warnings, then convert those into the errors. Don't let my code run. So currently, if you don't add these warnings as errors, all those nullable stuff will be just warnings. So you get a bunch of yellow lines when you compile your code, but you don't stop on those. So when you turn those to the errors, then you will get a bunch of red lines, and your code will not run, and you need to fix your stuff. So let's see, what will my code even do when I rebuild my solution? What is this? Let me see, just in case, is everything okay here? Yes. What is this? For switch, what? This is something new. I think I need to close my solution and open it back again. Let's see, can I now build it now? And I hit those problems. So now you actually can see what are the problems with your code. Because this really helps you out that what the hell are you doing with your reference types. Are you checking correctly that those are nulls or not nulls, and even are you declaring those correctly? Cannot convert null literal to non-nullable reference type. So this gives us the warning that, hey, the run method cannot be a null. It's not allowed. So we need to check what the hell is this run method in our menu system. This is the func. And we do not tell here to the system that, hey, this actually can be null. We don't allow nulls here. And to allow nulls, let's go to the theory. It's the classical question mark. So this turns, when we initially spoke about value types, that when you add a question mark to that, the end of the value type, for example, Boolean, if you don't know what the value of the switch is it true or false? If you haven't observed it yet, you declare it as a Boolean question mark. So now we can also turn or add question mark to the reference types. So now I can say that this thing here can actually be a null. Let's build it again. What are you complaining now? Run method. Run method can be. No, actually, this thing here must be null. So this is the property, and here we initialize it from that one. Yes, those now match. Yep, those warnings are now gone. Or those errors. So now we got different next errors. Board, name, board, blah blah. So now we have questions here. What the hell is this? So can the board, now you really need to think about it. Because here I'm telling to the system that this board square state, the board, can be a null, basically. I'm not initializing it to anything. So if it's not initialized, then the default value is a null. And this is what the warning, the error tells me, that non-nullable property board must contain a non-null value when exiting constructor. So when this game board is initialized, this will take the default value null, but the declaration tells here that no, cannot be a null. There is no question mark at the end of it. So this is error. So now you need to figure out what to actually do with that one. So it's not so simple that just add a question mark. You actually need to think about it. Can it be null or cannot be null? And if it cannot be null, if game board is initialized and the board cannot be null, when the game board is initialized, it's always there, the value, then what the hell shall I write here? So can I make it, for example, I can make a dummy object here, the same way as this one is a dummy object, basically. I just create a new empty list and doesn't add like anything actually in it. Or we have this null forgiving operator. So basically the exclamation point tells to compiler that, hey, forget it. I know what I'm doing. So forget here in this one specific place, forget your warning. Although I said that something can be nullable or not nullable, depending on the context, what I want to do, I can tell with the exclamation point that, hey, dear system, go to hell. I'm smarter than you. Because this pretty often happens, because I know that somewhere somebody will always initialize the board when the actual game board is created, that this board will always get the value, so it cannot be in reality, in real life, it isn't null anywhere. But I don't have anything specific to say here, so then I can say this. This doesn't help me yet, but now I can say this one, null exclamation point. So I'm overriding the system and telling the system that it's totally okay to initialize it to null. So let's try to remove the question mark or the exclamation point. And let's make this one with the value null. So now this is totally pointless actually. To assign a null to it is pointless because it's null by definition when the object is created, because I know I'm not initializing to anything. See, GameBoard has cannot convert null literal to non-nullable reference type. So this is a warning here, that this cannot be assigned anymore like this. And we get the separate warning on the next line. Ships must contain a non-nullable or non-null value when exiting constructor. And now I can tell to the system this. I'm assigning a value, and with an exclamation point I tell to the compiler that, hey, forget all this, this is totally okay value. And there's only one game board warning left. And there's actually a special value which is called the default. Default is a language construct which digs out from the system or is, let's say, defined separately for every type, digs out the default value. So the null is specific null, yeah, like pointer. So there's no pointer. Null is only can be applied to the reference types. But the default is a little bit like wider type, because I can actually say that the default Boolean value is a false, or default integer value, which is 0, or double value, which is also 0.000 something. So both are totally okay, since the default for the reference types is actually null. So those two here are identical in that sense. So this is called the null forgiving operator, and this will allow you to still override the system and tell that, hey, I know better. Don't force me to do any kind of like fancy controls. For example, you can write something like this. Let's say I will overwrite the toString, and I want to return from here, let's say ships.count. This is a total error. Oh, sorry, I need to convert it to string also. Is everything okay with my rider, actually? Because I should get the warning here, most likely. BattleShip brain. Has something happened here? No, nullable reference types is enabled. Build solution. Oh yeah, since no, this is not okay. Since I'm telling that it cannot be a null, this is okay here. If I will declare it like this can be a null. Now I hit the warning here. Possible system null reference exception. Because since this can be a null, then this will give me the warning. And I can try to build it. And now I got this error. Dereference of possible null reference. So this can be a null. And I can use the null forgiving operator here also with the exclamation point that forget it. I know better. Cannot be null. But this is no actual check. If it is a null, then you will crash in the runtime. But you can silence the compiler with that. Let's see. Oh, it's here. How much time do we have? I'm running out slowly. So we have those nice operators, all kinds of like ternary conditional, null conditional operator, null coalescing operator. I think we already touched them somewhere. Did we? Yeah. I think, yes. But now those apply like even more, because now compiler actually can do something useful with those. You can use those even with the reference types now directly. So this is kind of like a nice thing to use. And exactly what we already covered, that in case if our null reference type has a late initialization, so we know that the value will come somewhere later. So what we can do is initialize it in constructor. That works out of the box. We can use a backing field with checks, or we can initialize property to null or default with this null forgiving operator. So all those options are here in this this example. So the name 2 is initialized in the constructor. So this is totally okay already. And then we use a backing field here, which actually checks that the property underneath is actually allowed to be null. So then checks on top of that one. And the name 4 gives the default option here. So it has to. It's okay to initialize it to null in the initializer. And then we can do, okay, probably you don't need those. This is kind of like fancy stuff we can cover somewhere in the future a little bit. Typically we don't use it. So all we need is this question mark, exclamation point, and sometimes those kind of like fancy operators a little bit. So let's write your homework. Where is our documentation? Your homework. No, not that one. So this is the 14th. Need add support for GameBoard configurations. Support creating and saving of new configurations. Allow loading configurations from disk. Serialize. Save and load. Enable nullable reference types system-wide. And what was the file name? Is this okay? So add the support for configurations, loading, overwriting, I don't know, maybe deleting if you want to. Then solve the game state, saving and loading, whatever the game state currently is for you. So you can actually restore it and then continue with whatever your current application is doing or capable of doing. And enable nullable reference type system-wide. And let's say fix all the warnings and errors. Anyhow, fix all the warnings in your code base. So you will get a bunch of warnings that something is not there and it can be null and it cannot be null, etc. So fix all those warnings so that your code compiles without any yellow or red lines. Everything clear? Any questions? Because we are running out of the time.
We already got the solution item. Solution item folder.
Yep. So you just, it's not necessarily per se. When you click on the solution, you can do here, add new solution folder. Just give any name. It's not actually a real folder. It's just a collection of stuff you want to put it in it. So now you can add on it and add the existing item. And then you can dig out whatever you want and just add it there, even if it's not part of solution or normally not seen. Then you can reference it that way. And for example, you can do even this stuff. When you click now, when I have this solution folder and this one reference here, I can look at the solution file. I can see that this is here, solution items. Now I can make a little bit manual editing here, copy paste, and say that this is git ignore. So now I can actually edit my git ignore. Kas te tahate nüüd küsimusi kõik küsida? Meil olid selle jaoks sõbrad assistendid, kes istusid siin pidevalt. Meil hakkab 3 minuti pärast uus laeng. Kodanikud, kus te ennem olite? Chat, asjad, särgid, värgid, assistendid istuvad. Küsige. Küsige nüüd ka muidugi, hanke tulla. Ma tahtsin küsida. Paigutada seal reeglid, mida me järgmine nädal. Kuskil siis, jah? Praegu seivile suvapäi koodis teha. Nii nagu on, jah. Ei, no sa võid sellest saad jookse ette, hakka rohkem tegema ja mõtle ette, jumala eest. Sa võid terve mängu valmistada, et siin juba meie sõbrad juba ütlesid, et nendel juba kõik töötame.
Värvilist.
Ja värviline ja arrow key movement, jah, ja animeeritud ja saaks heliefektidega. Räägi kõva häälega siin ütleb.
lahinga niimoodi läheneda, et ma GameState'i kunagi ei salvesta, ma salvestan initial selle state'i ja tehtud käigud ja siis ma jõuan sinna GameState'i niimoodi, et ma laen selle initial state'i sisse ja lasen tal mängida siin.
See on kehva, sest mis siis, kui su mäng on nagu 1000 käiku.
See läheb päris jõhkraks läheb. Ei, aga noh, see, kui sa tahad nagu Aldot teha, kui sa tahad Undo support'i teha,
5 käiku hoida.
sa võid selle küll.
Siis ma jääks kõigest sellest 2D ja kõigest läheks mööda, ma ei salvesta kunagi seda board'i ennast. Ainult nagu play nagu selle initial state'i ja käigu.
Ja nagu initial state'is sul on board on, kuhugi on laevad paigutatud on.
Jaa, aga need on salvestatud teistmoodi mul.
Sa võid salvestada teistmoodi ja sealt võtta.
Nagu mäng enam-vähem töötab hetkel ja nad on nagu listina pandud.
Jah, sa võid, absoluutselt jah.
Selles mõttes,
et see on teoreetiliselt lubatud.
Lihtsalt ma räägin, et kui sa...
Ja no praktiliselt jah
võib-olla. Mingi 1000 käiku on just lõpuks mäng, sa keegi ootab seal taga on.
Ei, sa saad selle mälus juba kiiresti teha, nii sa ei pruugi midagi visualiseerida.
Ma ei saa tegelikult midagi arvuti ise taga, kiiresti mängib selle läbi.
Compute
power'it läheb, on ju.
Kui 1000 käik on, siis see board on ikka mingi massiivselt suur ja siis sinna läheb salvestamisesse kõvasti ruumi.
Ei no jah, sa ei saagi rohkem on ju kui 10x10 standardlaual on ju. Okei, kui on 100x100 on ju, 100x100 laud on ju, see on 1000 ruut on ju, siis sul on tehtud 999 käiku on ju, et nagu see viimane üks tühi ruut on ju.
Aga ma mõtlen ja sõnaga, kuidas ma tahan.
Jaa, ei absoluutselt. Ei, aga iseenesest on see täiesti okei, mis sa nagu räägid, on ju. Et ega siin ei ole, ütleme, siin ei ole, eesmärk ei ole siin nagu kirjutada mingit optimaalset nagu on ju BattleShipi, vaid nagu mängida keelega on ju, mängida keelekonstruktsioonidega on ju. Et siin ei ole otseselt nagu õiget ega valet nagu vastus selles kontekstis, mida nagu teha üritada. Nii on ka õige, nagu sa teed ja nii on ka okei.
Lihtsalt seda kodutöös on otseselt kirjutanud see, kes nagu GameState, et sa oleks veits sellega vastu olla, sellepärast meieks üks.
Jah, teen kohe ära, enne kui ma selle ära oskan.
Granted, et see muidugi jah, jälgib samu häid praktikaid.
Jah.
Hea tudeng teemine pommi, hea töö eest eelmisel semester. Tänu täheks, söö pommi.
Söö pommi, okei. Millise?
Ained läbi.
Ahah, aitäh.
See nüüd tuleb teil hübriid, mul kõik seda on, ma ei tea, ülejäänud on teinud.
Tuleb juba käita ei jõuga.
Ma ei tea. Sa oledki meil esmaspäeva hommikuti või reede hommikuti puudu. Meil oli täna üks. Sina oledki puudu.
Sinu pärast see aine ongi parasjagu niisugune kehv. Sind ei ole. Õudne jama.
Ma kohe kunagi on, mis ma vaatan, loen jälgida kogu aeg.
See on kõik vaadata.
Jaa. Mis sa tahad? Koha peal on see raske, et midagi maha jääd, siis noh. Ise dikteerid.
Sa praegu ütle Andres, sul punnib su kuidagi saad deklaratsiooni lisaks selle.
Muidugi saad. Dekanaat ja vahetakse. Mis probleem on? See ei ole üldse nagu mingi küsimus. Parim on see, et pead minema õppejõu, kes nõus oleku küsima. Dekanaat ütleb, et saatke meile õppejõu e-maili, et on olemas paberiga. Me kirjutame küll alla kollektiivselt. Et see nagu hiljem lisada ei ole mingi probleem ja maha võtta ka mitte. Et meil nagu